Hello and welcome to the Satluj TV podcast. Today's guest, all being well, will be appearing on a regular basis on our series of podcasts coming up. So our guest, Dr. Bakhshish Singh Sandhu MD, is a highly experienced and board-certified internal medicine doctor. But as well as being an accomplished medical practitioner, he's also a highly respected and active campaigner for both Sikh rights and the nation of Khalistan. As such, he's the current president of the Council of Khalistan, which is dedicated to its stated aim of liberating the Punjab from Indian occupation. He's also the president of Khalistan Food for All, a charity established to fund the UN food programmes. And he's also the co-founder of Sikhs For Justice, having been with the organisation since 2007. And even amongst this enormous list of achievements, he's still had time to author the book Punjab, A Tale of State Terrorism, Persecution, Econocide and Genocide, available on Amazon and other outlets. Dr. Sandhu, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Angus. I appreciate you having me on your program. We're going to talk about the Punjab being as an occupied and Sikh people being subjugated. So since 1947, when India got independence, the British gave the control or the administrative control to Indian National Congress. As a result of that, all the promises that were made to Sikhs were forgotten. Not only that, India promulgated such draconian laws like National Security Act, Unlawful Activity Prevention Act, to suppress and repress Sikhs. To be specific, starting in 1948, India started carving up the territory of Punjab. While Punjab was an independent country until 1849, at that time, India was not a country. India was then a basically conglomeration of several small princely states. All the time, the British ruled Punjab. They did not interfere with the territorial integrity of Punjab. Punjab remained an intact state. However, after the partition, Indian government started to break up Punjab and they gave some areas to a state now called Himachal. Then there was denial of Sikh identity, Sikh religion and Punjabi language. That resulted in denial of Punjab being a state. While Punjab was a country, and after the partition, when India got freedom, they denied the statehood of Punjab. And the Sikhs and the people of Punjab were very upset. So they started peaceful demonstrations. And that resulted in the Indian Army invasion of Darbar Sahib, also called Golden Temple, Amritsar, on July 4th, 1955. They killed 200 Sikhs who were basically unarmed. They were peacefully demonstrating. So ever since then, whenever the Sikhs have asked for their rights, they answered with violence, bullets, extrajudicial killings, disappearances, and subsequently, when Sikhs were asking for their rights, they were labeled as terrorists, separatists, and unpatriotic. That led to the invasion of Golden Temple Amritsar in June 1984 and also the Sikh genocide in 1984 that included November 84 massacre of Sikhs after the assassination of Indira Gandhi by her bodyguards. So this is a long tale of continuing persecution of Sikhs in Punjab and India.
Indeed, it's a very tumultuous history, certainly since 1947, and of course you've led up to 1984 there, a very key year in the history of the region, and of course still commemorated even last week, the 40th anniversary. So can I ask you, Dr. Sandhu, I mean, you've referenced here the lead up to 1984, and there's a very key element here that I've noticed, is that the Sikhs in the Punjab basically were asking peacefully just for their basic human rights. They have a lot of natural resources in the Punjab. It has the river resources, which is so desired by the rest of India. But the Anandpur resolution, if I recall correctly, was designed as a simple plea for basic human rights, fundamental recognition of both culture, but also access to their own resources. So what led from that to the violence, the terrible violence of 1984?
Okay, so the attack on Golden Temple in 1984 preceded by multiple events. One of them was that Indian government basically prompted up the demand for Khalistan. So as I said, the Sikhs wanted their independent country since 1849 when the British took over. However, to punish Sikhs indirectly, the Indian government basically infiltrated the Sikh organizations, provided them with weapons, and then asked them to demand for Khalistan. So then the Sikhs were then labeled as terrorists or separatists. Thus, this was an excuse for the Indian government to basically render injustice and attacks and violence against the Sikhs. Before the 1984 Golden Temple invasion, Sant Jarnail Singh Ji Bhindranwale carried out a lot of negotiations with the Indian government, Indira Gandhi. But Indira Gandhi negotiated intransigently, and that basically when they had an agreement on certain issues, what was announced in the news media was totally different from what was agreed upon in the negotiations. So the reason for that was the Indira Gandhi and the government of the time, they wanted to basically break the backbone of Sikhs and hurt them psychologically. So the reason for that was because they prepared. The reason for my statement is the Indian government prepared for the attack for 2.5 years in the remote mountains, and they practiced the attack with making a replica of Darbar Sahib. And their statement was that they wanted to capture Sant Jarnail Singh Ji Bhindranwale. But later on, they said, no, we don't want to capture Sant Jarnail Singh Ji Bhindranwale just alone, but they wanted to harm the Sikhs mentally and physically and economically. So they also attacked 37 other Gurdwaras. If they wanted to capture Sant Jarnail Singh Ji, then they should have basically not attacked the other 37 Gurdwaras, because he was only at this place. They knew very well that the Sant Jarnail Singh was only at Darbar Sahib. So this was all the manipulation, and Indian government at the time, Indira Gandhi's government, was also pressured by BJP leaders to carry out the attack. Because there was denial of Sikh religion, Sikh religious identity, Punjabi language, and the state of Punjab. This led to the Sikhs demanding their rights peacefully. However, the Indian government answered them with the bullets, and the Golden Temple was attacked with helicopters and tanks and poisonous gas. Children were held from their legs, and their heads were struck against the walls, causing instantaneous death. And still the Sikhs are struggling to get their rights and have their country back. We think that we have tried to negotiate with the Indian government. It's called internal right to self-determination. So in internal right to self-determination, we have tried to negotiate with India, give us justice, give us equal rights under the constitution, because the Sikhs are not given equal rights under the Indian constitution. But India has not done that. So now we are doing external right to self-determination. External right to self-determination means secession. Because the United Nations says that the people who are seeking independence, they should first seek to get their rights from the country in which they are living. However, if they have tried and they have failed, and the state in which they live, and they want to separate from, not giving them any rights, they have no option but to secede and create their own country.
So, if I may focus on 1984 here, because Khalistan is a huge issue, which I would like to cover in a separate podcast specifically, but looking back at 1984, and in the context of the Indian government in those days, the context of the decades leading up to that, with a peaceful plea for their basic human rights. Why did the Indian government fear the Sikh community so heavily? So heavily, they launched a full-scale military assault, not just on the most sacred temple to the community, but, as you say, to all the Gurdwaras across Punjab. What generated this deep fear, hatred? What was it? Why were they so scared of the Sikh community?
Well, that's a good question. See, right from the beginning, the Indian administrative, let's say, structure, they did not trust Sikhs. Somehow they misinterpret what the Sikhs' values are. So number one reason for that says the Sikhism has different values, like equal rights, gender equality, social equality, all people are created equal. That's diagonally opposite to the values of Indian administration and the majority Hindu religion. That's one thing. Second thing, they think that if Sikhs get their state, they may try to take over India, which is also false presumption or presumption to attack Sikhs. Then the Indian government tried to put a wedge between Hindus and Sikhs. Hindus and Sikhs, they lived amicably in Punjab. However, the Indian government, they gave, let's say, arms to Sikhs and created an atmosphere of fear, and the India presented as a savior of Punjabi Hindus, and then to justify that and get their vote, they were attacking Sikhs and basically carrying out all those persecutions, extrajudicial killings. The question is that why India is doing that? The Sikhs are the ones who got them freedom. The Sikhs are the ones who got them freedom first from the Mughals and then the Afghanis and then the British. But now they are basically doing the same thing to the Sikhs. The reasons for India to get independence from the British is the same reason for the Sikhs to get independence from India. Basically, to sum it up, the Punjab has very strategic location. So the Sikhs are warriors. So India is using Sikhs as weapons of war to defend against China and against Pakistan. Second thing, Punjab is the biggest resource of fresh water. So water is in scarcity, as you know, and the Punjab has a tremendous amount of water. India wants to keep occupation of Punjab because of several reasons, and Punjab's strategic location. Number one, India is using Sikhs as weapons of war. So in the wars against China and Pakistan, the Sikh soldiers are in the front. That's number one. Number two, Punjab is a very big source of fresh water. So India is draining more than 75% of water of Punjab against the violation of India's own constitution and international riparian rights. So Indian constitution says the states control the water in which the water flows. But in Punjab, India is violating its own constitution. And then the international riparian law says the people of the state in which the rivers run is their water first, because when there's a flooding, when there are hurricanes, those people are affected adversely. So the third thing is Punjab is a producer of a large amount of grain, which India needs so critically. And then at the top of that, they have proceeded to basically damage Punjabi language. They have not recognized the Punjabi language. The reason for not recognizing Punjabi language was that 1956 State Reorganization Act was based on the language of the people of that state. So they denied the status to Punjabi language, thus making a basis for denying the formation of statehood of Punjab. All these things would have been easily solved if they had given the status to Punjab as a state. Since the state status of Punjab was denied, that caused a lot of basically bad feeling among the Sikhs that we are denied our religion, we are denied our language, we are denied our state, our natural resources are being diverted. So where would the Sikhs go? That's the root cause of invasion of Golden Temple in June, because when the Sikhs are asking for their rights, the Indian government want to repress them and make them so weak that they will never ask for their rights again.
Yes, it resonates even today, that legacy from 1984, and of course it still impacts very heavily on the Punjabi community and across the diaspora. I'm interested in this character, Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. He was a very charismatic character. He was a focal point for this movement resisting the forces of India. And he gave up his life. He was martyred in the most heroic fashion in that dreadful assault. You know, he stood to the last man defending the temple. What do you think his legacy is today in terms of, he's obviously revered by many people in the community, but what do you think his legacy is even today, 40 years later?
I think Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale's legacy is that he woke up the Sikh nation. He did not demand Khalistan. He was demanding equal rights under the law, equal status of people of Punjab, and he wanted justice. So he said, look, we want justice. We want equal rights. And if you don't give us that, then when Indian government will attack Golden Temple, will lay down the foundation of Khalistan. He many Hindus were helped. When there was a dispute among the Hindu families, they came to him for deliverance or justice, and he did that. He did not say anything about any other religion or Hindu religion, but he basically said, we want justice. I'll give you an example. So 13 Sikhs were shot dead on April 13, 1978. And there was broad daylight, and the 13 Sikhs were killed, and 62 Nirankaris were charged. And that case was tried outside Punjab in the Haryana court. And all the 62, those who were charged, they were basically totally freed. And he said, Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale said, how is that 13 Sikhs are killed during the broad daylight and 62 people are charged and none of them is punished? And he asked for justice. And then he was the only Sikh who was demanding justice for Sikhs. All the other Sikh politicians didn't have anything to do with it. At that time, the state government was of Prakash Singh Badal, who did not pursue the justice for the Sikhs.
Of course, the immediate backlash against Operation Blue Star, that awful operation, that military assault on the Golden Temple and of course the other Gurdwaras, the backlash included the assassination of Indira Gandhi, the architect, shall we say, behind that whole operation. Let me ask you a provocative question. Do you think it justified the assassination of Indira Gandhi?
See, here's what it is. When the Sikh community has been attacked, 10,000 Sikhs were massacred at the Golden Temple, Amritsar, and most of them were men, or rather, they were like women and children. And they were attacked, the Golden Temple was attacked by the helicopters and tanks, and poisonous gas. I think there was a feeling among the Sikh community that there's no way they can get justice from Indian system. So, and even prior to that, prior to the invasion, there was drainage of water system of Punjab and the grains from Punjab. So it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. When the Sikhs realize they're denying justice, they're denying our religion, our Sikh religious identity, our culture, civil and political rights are being denied, and now they have attacked Golden Temple. See, no Sikh will accept the attack on Golden Temple because so much in the Sikh history is based upon this institution of human equality and equal rights. So then they thought that they had to do something to equalize.
Of course, what followed that was the genocide, which was just a shocking, outrageous few days in September of 1984, in which tens of thousands of innocent men, women and children weren't just killed, they were tortured and massacred in large numbers. And I'd like to, maybe as a separate podcast, focus on that one. But the events of 1984 that started off with Operation Blue Star, as a final question to you, Dr. Sandhu, do you think, 40 years later, do you think we will ever see justice done? Do you think we will ever see those responsible for those decisions that were made? Do you think they will ever face real justice?
I don't think the Sikhs will get justice in the Indian system. Let me prove this with example. For example, at the farmers' protest, the farmers were protesting for more than 15 or 16 months, and the Indian government budged to negotiate. And the farmers were basically asking for repealing the farm laws, which were passed incorrectly. And then those Sikhs who were peacefully protesting, they were attacked. They were basically, internet was disconnected. All sorts of things were done, and the Sikhs realized that now we are asking for repeals of this farm laws. The farm laws were so detrimental to Sikhs, so that most of the Sikhs in Punjab have a small parcels of land. They may be having 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 acres of land, and even if a family has 1 acre of land, they can subsist on that. So if that's being taken away from them, there's no way they will tolerate that. So the Sikhs, particularly in general, people of Punjab think that they cannot get justice or equal rights in Punjab from the Indian government because the Punjab strategic location, as I mentioned, and there are so many other things. Like in 1982 Asian Games, the people of Punjab were not allowed to go to Delhi. So let's say there was Asian Games in 1982. People want to go and watch the games. The Sikhs and the Sikhs parliamentarians were also blocked. They were not allowed to go there. At all the instances, people of Punjab and Sikhs have realized that there's no justice system. For example, now recently, when Sikhs are asking for their rights, their just rights, people are not allowed to speak, and when people ask for their rights, they are basically arrested and imprisoned under National Security Act and Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, and they have no access to law. Once you are charged with any sort of, let's say, a clause under National Security Act or UAPA, then you have very limited, maybe no access to a lawyer or a court system, and you basically sit in the jails without having any course to justice. And then similarly, now Modi, as you have heard, the Prime Minister Modi used to say addressing to Sikhs as terrorists. So in 2019, Indian government labeled Sikhs For Justice as a terrorist organization. And a year later, in July 2020, they labeled individual Sikhs as terrorists. And I'm making a point here that the Indian government has labeled Sikhs who ask for their just rights peacefully are labeled terrorists. And then Modi says, oh, we will come to your home and kill you, the terrorists, means Sikhs. And then this year, when he was campaigning for his election, he said, we have come to your home and we have killed you. This was published in Washington, D.C., Washington Post. Clearly that Modi admitted that he has carried out assassinations of Sikhs, and they call them as terrorists, but also they connected the Sikhs are terrorists because in the 2020 they labeled individual members of Sikhs For Justice and some other organizations as individual terrorists. So there's no way the Sikhs can expect, and they should not expect, because the history is very, very, very clear. History is full of all the examples of how Sikhs are being treated.
Yeah, there's a huge amount to talk about there, but unfortunately we're going to have to save those for later podcasts, and we will pursue all those huge topics in great detail. But in the meantime, Dr. Sandhu, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching the Satluj TV podcast. We'll see you next time.